Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of possibly 65 episodes. I honestly have no idea how many episodes it's going to take, but I've started and now I need to finish. I also don't want to shortchange my students that are going to be watching this, so this might be a little different from what you usually see on YouTube, explaining a little bit more, going a little bit deeper into some techniques, but I am going to try to keep it short and sweet, which I'm not starting out very well right now doing that by explaining this. Anyhow, so in this episode we're going to continue to roughen out. So we have our door and we also have our back panel, which is essentially a door. It's stiles and rails. So we're going to focus on the stiles and rails. With this design, I went ahead and retweaked the design in SketchUp. So I figured if I'm going to offer this to you, I want to be proud of it and make sure it's been fine-tuned. And what I mean by that is, in the design originally, the stiles and the rails are actually around 1 7/8, which doesn't work well if you're getting an 8/4 board, because a lot of people, where they get their material from, if they're getting 8/4, it's what they call hit and miss or skip plane. So by the time they get it home and they rough out, they might get 1 3/4, maybe a little bit heavier. So they definitely could get 1 3/4, but they won't get 1 7/8 is kind of what I'm getting at. So I've designed it where everything is 1 3/4. That way you should have no problem yielding these parts. And I've tweaked a few other little things which I'll show you maybe in a later video as we go. I'm still working on that design to offer to you guys. So the main focus, like I said, was the stiles. Everything's roughed out. What I tried to do is try to keep things in a sequence, meaning for the door, these are book matched, which look really nice, and that worked well for that. The actual rails all are just basically a slip match where they came out one piece and I just kind of slipped match it out like a deck of cards, like I did the side panels, and that way it's a nice color balance going on. The back panel you can be a little less picky about, but just keep in mind, this might be a little crazy, but this back side to the right here, this one you see because it's an opening, so I've book matched those out. But again, you have shelves, and by the time you put all your junk in there, no one's going to notice. So I'm pretty happy with these. We'll also take care of the panels. Those have been glued up, left, you know, for more than 24 hours, and we're just going to join them plain. The way I typically mill, and this has probably got a lot to do with my training and the fact that I have straight knives. The way I do it is I take care of one face. So I join one face, then I plane the opposite face. Once I have that down to final thickness, then I address my edges. So now all my parts, these are perfectly parallel to each other, and they're done to final thickness. What that allows me to do is it allows me not to have just one face that's married to the joiner when I need to make this edge 90. What I mean by that is, since I have straight knives, it's a bit more of an issue, but if the grain is going down, that's a bad situation, right? The grain's going down and the knives are doing this, it's going to tear out. You want the grain going up. So if I only do one face, one edge, this face has to go up against her. The only option I have is to flip it, but that doesn't help. Like this piece, the grain's going down, that has to go up, that's the wrong way, that's going to do the same, still the wrong way. So what I want to do is rotate it over and go. So that just gives me more options. And now my grain's going to go on out and I'm not getting tear out. We have all our stiles and rails to final thickness and width. So this is actually our back panel. A couple of things I want to mention. These are long because these will be the actual top rails going across the back panel and the bottom rails. And if I were to cut them, rough them out in length now, they're kind of tricky to plane. So I typically leave them long, and then that way they have a continuous grain going all the way through, and they're just easier to mill that way. The back mid rail, basically two pieces get glued up because it needs to be 3.5 inches. I totally forgot and I went and milled those pieces individually, so I'm just going to quickly take my hand plane to it, make sure I've got a nice joint and glue that up. And when I do that, since they're already to final thickness, I'll just be really careful and take a hand scraper to it. So Just keep that in mind, that back rail is actually wider, and usually I glue it up ahead of time, being thick like we did the panels, and then plane it down. I just forgot. These are some extra parts, which is good for testing stuff, and then these are parts for our door. Also, this little guy. So this was planed down the same time as the side panels were, but this is basically going to make our little doweling jig, and that'll come more clear later on as we get there, but this has to be the same thickness as your sides. Alright, now we can cut to final length. The rails, you'll notice in the cut list, once I have it up, we're going to make them longer than they need to be, because I'm going to do a little detail on the bottom. And also the mid rail is much shorter. It's not a bridle joint, it's a little stub tenon. But if I cut that to final length now, it's really hard to get all three shoulder cuts the same. So just leave them all long, make them consistent, do the shoulder cuts, and then everything will come together nice and parallel and perfect. And then you can cut it to final length later. That'll make more sense as we move forward. Okay, so we have our side panels all cut, and then we have our back panel, obviously without the panels. That's kind of what that's going to look like. Got our stiles and rails. Everything's oversized, meaning it's not, there's no joinery, so the shoulder cut's not there yet. And then our door laid out. So the next thing to do now is put these guys to the side, stick them, or just really probably shrink wrap them up because I don't want it to move, and then kind of focus on this guy doing the dowels.